Genre trends can be quite cyclical. Sure, linear genre trees look nice and tidy, but reality is never that neat. Styles are always shifting and moving, but it's not always strictly forward. Sometimes we hit a natural dead end on an idea when it's gone as far as it makes sense to pursue it. Sometimes you push things so far that it becomes unrecognizable as to what it's meant to be, and there's a conscious no, too far reset moment. Sometimes a new generation of kids just get nostalgic for the past. But whatever the reason, there's always been a reliable trend of fads resetting to earlier stages to begin development anew from an earlier place and seeing where it goes this time. Take thrash, for instance. It got lost and distracted by groove and prog metal in the 90s until a new generation got their hands on it and came back with an 80s-rooted and admittedly terrible pizza-themed revival. After thrash fans got tired of being shameful jokes, there was a more professional and serious wave which took off with more expansive and developed ideas. Now that everyone is a bit over being so high-minded, Chile has led us back into the Teutonic thrash, and now we get 17 South American deathened or blackened creator reworkings every year, but now with a technically advanced skill set. Obviously this is a simplified history which has skipped a lot of the other little branches, but just there we can see the genre take stock and reset before moving off with a new focus 4 times in the 2000s alone. Extreme Doom is a genre which I think that we're at a point where we need one of these resets. I mean, what's going on in that space right now? The giant head looking over some Little People era of epic funeral doom has largely been done for a few years. People still seem to be excited about Thou, but the sludge doom thing hasn't had much jump out of the morass since, God, Primitive Man? I guess there's a few bands doing the less ethereal yet somehow also less brutal disembowelment thing, but that's as much a death metal movement as it is a doom one. The last thing I can think of is the couple of heavy metalized party death doom records we get per year, but is that even a thing when Hooded Menace is the only one that anyone cares about? It's not like there's nothing good being released at all. I have a few doom albums in my current top 20 of the year, but there don't appear to be any niches developing into something to keep an excited eye on. So I think we're due for another one, and what's more, I think I've picked out the perfect reset point. Everyone remembers their first little micro niche that they really locked into. Maybe you got super into Icelandic black metal. Maybe you got into Caverncore. Maybe you were a first wave DSBM guy. Maybe you were a slam sycophant. Maybe it wasn't even music and you became known as the fantasy football tragic or the Disney adult. But at some point, everyone has found one particular little corner of their favourite things which has become their area of expertise. For me, my Disney adult moment was becoming the Torture Doom guy. Would it have been cooler if I got into DSL at the ground floor? Yes. Would I have seen more boobs if I got into Gent or literally anything else? Also yes. But horrible screech doom it is. Torture Doom was a tiny little micro scene which had a barely noticeable boom in the mid to late 2000s. It pretty much entirely revolved around Wormflame and quickly fell apart when everyone realised that no one was as good as Wormflame. There's a bit of range to it with how doom and how drone each act would be, but generally the main consistent traits were extremely low tempo, guitar driven funeral doom with a lot of high range DSBM screeching, extremely lo-fi productions, long-ass songs, even by funeral doom standards, and a mood of active physical suffering instead of being sad or depressed. It was not a big or particularly great scene, but it was my niche. Well up there about a dozen no-notes outright great releases, 20-something not amazing but interesting things, and like 60 total pieces of shit. That's such a weird, intentionally unenjoyable style shared between a handful of weird nerds on the forum era and internet, it was bound to be short-lived. So by the 2010s, it had kind of burned out with only a handful of acts like Funeralium sticking to the cause. And since then, that's kind of been it. There's been a handful of releases over the last decade which count, as in literally like 5 of them, so it's pretty safe to call it dead. And I think it's time to revive it, to torture it to death again. I'm not just being nostalgic and wanting to relive my youth here. I have 3 main arguments for why I genuinely believe this is a direction Extreme Doom should step towards for a few years, and that it'll be more successful than last time. The first one was covered a bit in the intro, but now we can look at it specifically from the angle of Funeral Doom. In the intro, I was trying to find stuff happening in Extreme Doom in general, and I struggled. Cutting things back to just Funeral Doom, there is nothing. The late 2010s and early 2020s had the big face on the horizon boom with Mizmor, Bellwitch, Atramentus, and many others going for an epic and monolithic approach, but since that's died out, the genre really hasn't done anything. I mean, there's still 30-odd albums coming out every year, but it's almost entirely basic genre exercises. Even when it's handled well, like Deha, The Howling Void, or Hellish Form, it really fails to leave much impact. If you like the Blue Ocean strategy, this ocean is as far away from the Pacific trash pile as you can possibly get. There's no distractions from anything that stands out from all the mopey keyboard-led stuff anymore. There's infinite room for something removed from the traditional to exist in the Funeral Doom space, and why couldn't that be Torture Doom 2? Ataraxia Likely had the biggest funeral release of last year, and it wasn't remotely near their best effort. And that band is only halfway to throwing off the shackles of normal Funeral Doom. Admittedly, it was still smaller than the biggest releases of prior years, but it still shows there's a Funeral Doom audience, and they do want something a bit spicier that stands out from the pile. And not much stands out from piles more than this. My second argument is that I think the extreme metal audience is readier for it now. Whether it's art house noise appreciation or reckless disregard for hearing, the extreme ends of modern metal are really goddamn extreme. For many in 2005, Enmity were a curiosity at best, or a joke at worst. Now there's a whole ass scene of bands trying to one-up them. Art house stuff used to be lavish, lighter, and progressive, but now we have goddamn effluence going around and literally making gore noise out of kitchen appliances. One of the more popular branches of current-day death metal is stuff which borrows the war metal aesthetic and is full of raw blasting and inapproachable productions. Outside of metal, insufferably long, tuneless noise rock art punk is a sizable chunk of an online music nerd's diet. Dissonant chords and noisy touches are basically the go-to move for a switch up to a basic genre these days. The youth of today might be physically weak, terminally online, brain-rotted shut-ins with no appreciable social skills, but, say what you will, they can handle some shit in their music. I say it's time to test out their resolve. My last reason for thinking Torture Doom could work this time around is technological. Zero-budget, minimal-knowledge home recordings in 2006 were awful. This thing came up right at the end of the early 2000s bedroom black metal boom, which was famous for two things: having zero musical ability and having horrendous early digital production. Torture Doom suffered from this. Yes, it was meant to sound harsh and decrepit, but these tones sound thin and weak and nondescript in a not good way. Build it alive! In this current time, this isn't really a thing anymore. People can make great sounding stuff from their toilet using an iPad now. I'm not just talking about being clean or professional sounding, I just mean doing raw and nasty in a more satisfying way. Raw black metal has had another boom in the Instagram era because we've learned how to record stuff at home and utilize buzzing tones and drum programming in a way which still sounds ramshackle, harsh and atmospheric, but not as broken and incompetent. Our knowledge on how to utilize noise at home productions is miles ahead of what it used to be when people were trying this stuff the first time. I'd love to hear someone try to do the funeral orchestra with a guitar tone from the body. The best thing about this point is that thanks to that tiny handful of modern releases in the style existing, I can show that I'm not only being hypothetical here.
And by metaphorically, I mean get your coat.
For example, Lacrimae Rerum did some really classic style Tomb of the Ancient King worship, but with 2017 production, and it rules. Just as harsh and as ugly as ever, but now it's as heavy as like Atramentus without all that lame melody and sadness stuff, and I love it. For comparison, this is what the main guy from that band was doing when this was happening the first time. I mean, I like Synthel as much as anyone, but that does not remotely compare. The bigger, meaner sound doesn't cost anything in terms of filthiness, it just delivers it in an infinitely more enjoyable and intense way. The other one I want to bring up is, what even is this?
What the hell is even that?
Is it a corkscrew? A sperm? I'll just call them cum screw. Again, we've got a band which sucked back in the day randomly changing gears, and out of some sick as hell Torture Doom black metal hybrid, delivering their version in a far rawer style than Lacrimae did, but it's a modern type of raw production and mixing. God, that is severe music. This isn't an unobtainable sound for random tiny bands anymore. There's absolutely been a big enough leap in general at-home production to make relitigating these ideas an exciting concept, not just because maybe more than a minivan's worth of people across the globe would be into it for once, but because it allows for it to expand into more directions than last time. And that's just in terms of the actual recording process. With all the training resources available online these days, it seems like everyone other than me is able to pick up how to play a guitar competently enough in no time. A strong correlation between the good bands in the first wave is that they were like real musicians in real bands who could actually hold an instrument when they wanted to, while the total garbage was largely people like me who were just strumming on random strings and could only occasionally hold a string down on a fret if lucky. Wormflame was Tyranny. The Funeral Orchestra was Room Magic. Reliquary was Begrime Extremis. Mum was Blood Incantation. Planet AIDS was Urfaust. The general standard of nerds making crap in their bedrooms is so much higher now. As you can see with Cumscrew's combination with black metal, these new tonal possibilities give the style a whole bunch of new directions to go in, besides the droning minimalism that the old hazy tones reveled in. With modern technology, we could take this still untrodden harsh, meanness-focused doomcore in so many directions. There's the black metal fusion, obviously, but you could ramp up the noise and make something really experimental. You could lean into the big heavy tones and let the riffs come out more and make the meanest Ahab album ever conceived. You could fuse it with modern experimental drone. Hell, get silly with an add a saxophone like everyone else. The sky's the limit. So between these things, I don't think there's any reason why Torture Doom coming back for another little burst over the next few years wouldn't be a success. Obviously, we're still talking about unpalatable extreme doom, so I don't mean success like quit your job and ride out the incoming AI bubble crash on the back of Synthel 2 or the Funeral Orchestra, but like, I think you should be good for 2 reviews on Metal Archives and 140 ratings on Rate Your Music with an average of 3.37. And really, isn't that all anyone needs in these trying times?